Okay, on page 34, we're going to talk about the causes of the Civil War. So at the top, I want you to write causes of the Civil War. This is what's going to lead us to having the Civil War, okay? In the center, I want you to put a box that says causes.
In the center of the paper?
In the center of the paper on page 34. There are 5 main causes and kind of a 6th one. Have you ever heard the term, the hair that broke the camel's back?
Nope.
Ever heard that?
That hair that broke the
Okay,
tortoise.
or it's the last straw. Somebody is finally, they've been fed up, and then all of a sudden somebody does something and they just crack.
Yeah.
That's what this is. The 6th reason is the final straw. Okay? So the first one is an easy one. Slavery. We all know that. That's a major issue that leads to the Civil War. Okay? The North and the South cannot agree on slavery. The second issue, tariff. And what's a tariff? Tax. Tariff dispute. Tariff dispute. Another one is different economies. Both the North and the South make their money in a very different way. And that's a problem. You have different cultures. And I'm going to put in parentheses a way of life. Now, we talked about this when you were doing, excuse me, we talked about this when you did the notes yesterday, the way of life. The North is on a clock, 9 to 5. They work in the factory. They can go home. They don't bring their work home with them. The South, however, can they get away from their work ever?
No.
No. They wake up and they have to work. They go to bed and they're thinking about work. They live where they work.
Wait, how do you go to bed and think about work? You dream about it.
You dream about work. You think about work. You worry about it. I need to do this and this and this and this, and I have this to do and I have that to do.
You lay in your bed and make a mental list of what you're going to do
Another reason, anybody seeing some kind of trend here? What?
It's everything we talked about yesterday.
It's everything we talked about yesterday. So what are we missing?
Oh, so met the mom.
Excuse me.
States' rights. Very good. States' rights. And the final one was the election of Abraham Lincoln.
How'd that make a man?
I'll talk about it in just a second. The election of Abraham Lincoln. And I put a box around that one because when I ask you what are the 5 causes of the Civil War, election of Lincoln is not one of the 5. It's not one of the main. You have the tariff, slavery, economies, cultures, and states' rights. Those are the 5 causes. The election of Abraham Lincoln was just kind of the final straw. It was the South going, I'm done, I'm throwing in the towel, we've tried, we've talked, we've tried to figure this out. I'm done, I'm finished, okay? Underneath Lincoln's box, I want you to write this. He was elected in 1860, okay? He was a Republican, and he was against slavery. The South thought that Lincoln would abolish slavery altogether. When in reality, all that Lincoln wanted to do, he didn't want to get rid of the states that had slavery. He wanted to ensure that the other states coming into the Union could not have slavery. So you remember that map we colored for the Compromise of 1850? You remember that map? And all that area that we colored blue? Remember? Remember this? Basically, Lincoln wants to ensure that this area that is blue will change back to being closed to slavery. That's all Lincoln wanted to do. He wanted to stop the spread of slavery. He didn't want to get rid of the institution of slavery altogether. Does that make sense? Questions? Do you have questions on the causes of slavery, of the Civil War? So what year did the Civil War occur? What year?
1861.
1861.
Woo! Can we write that in the front of that little thing?
Oh my gosh, why would we write it in the front of our spiral?
Because that's where you set the thing.
So to put what?
The little thingamajiggers.
It's a need-to-know date.
Mercedes is so smart.
Oh, we need to put a need-to-know date for 1845. What do we need to put in the need-to-know for 1845?
I don't know.
What happened in 1845? No? What? Texas gets annexed to the U.S. 28th state. So what do we write for 1861?
Civil War.
Civil War what?
Started.
Civil War begins. The South secedes, meaning the South breaks away from the North and they create their own country.
Come on, trainer away.
Okay, get your foldable out. And I want you to write this on your foldable. Okay. In the top left flap, okay, the top left flap, you're going to write important Texans in the Civil War.
I don't think I can write that.
The top right flap, you're going to write the name Francis Lubbock. Below Francis Lubbock, you're going to write Thomas Green.
Thomas Green.
Under Thomas Green, you're going to write John Magruder. I think he has the best name out of all of them. Just because the last name's fun. Next to John Magruder, you're going to write John Reagan. Above John Reagan, you're going to write John Bell Hood. So your foldable looks like this.
Why are they all John? Most of them.
Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you have the packet that says Important Texans in the Civil War across the top. You have little excerpts or bio cards about each one of these gentlemen. Okay? You're going to read the information, and then you're going to pull out important facts that have to do with 3 specific criteria. Okay? I want to know what it has to do, if it has to do with Texas, the Civil War, and between the years 1861 to 1865. If it falls under those 3 criteria, then I need you to write it inside of their foldable. Okay? I don't need to know how they died. I don't need to know where they were born. I want to know what they have to do with Texas Civil War and the 1861 to 1865. So any information you find in your packet, you're going to write in your foldable. In about 15 or 20 minutes, we'll come back, and then we will work on going through the correct answers together. Okay? We're going to start with Francis Lubbock. Let's look at Francis Lubbock. What did you learn about Mr. Lubbock?
No, never mind.
In 1861, he was elected governor.
Okay.
I was gonna say Texas.
1861, he became the governor of Texas. What else? I can't hear you. Say it again.
Lubbock also served as an aide camp for Jefferson Davis and was captured with him in the war.
Okay. He was captured with President Jefferson Davis and was an aide to the Confederate government. What else?
Oh my gosh.
Did he provide soldiers?
Yes.
Did he join the army? He joined the Confederate Army in 1863. Okay. Mr. Thomas Green. What do we need to know about Mr. Thomas Green?
He served with the Confederate Army.
Okay. He was actually commander in the Confederate Army. What else?
Came to assist Texas. Came to Texas to assist Texas in the Revolution during the Battle of San Jacinto.
But is the Battle of San Jacinto dealing with the Civil War?
No.
I'm looking only for a Civil War. What else? What else do we need to know?
In 1863, he was promoted to general and participated in the Battle of Galveston.
Okay, he served in the Battle of Galveston. And he was killed during the war too.
You said you didn't want to put how he was killed.
But if it had to do with the Civil War, I wanted to know.
Oh.
If they died of yellow fever at their home when they were 80, I don't care. If they died during the war, I want to know. Let's look at Mr. John Magruder. Mr. Magruder. What do we know about him? What can we put down about him?
Magruder resigned from the U.S. Army to take a commission as Lieutenant Colonel in the Confederate Army.
Okay, so he was a lieutenant colonel. It's said colonel. It's spelled colonel. I don't really know why it said colonel, but that's what it is. He was lieutenant colonel in the Confederate Army. What else do we need to know about him? What else is important?
After the Civil War, he fled to Mexico where he served as emperor in Mexico.
Do I really care about that?
Nope.
That's after the Civil War.
Yes.
I can't. What did he do with Galveston?
He built it.
He recaptured Galveston. He recaptured Galveston from the Union Army. Let's look at Mr. John Bell Hood. What did John Bell Hood do?
He was promoted.
Say it again.
I don't know the guerrilla. It starts with B.
That's like for James.
Brigadier?
Yeah.
Brigadier General? Brigadier General. He was in charge. He was the commander of Hood's Brigade. Why is it important to know about Hood's Brigade? What were they known as? They were known to be what? The finest. They were known as Lee, who's the general of the South. Lee's
Army.
finest soldiers. They fought in the battles of Second Manassas, Sharpsburg, Vicksburg, Fredericksburg, sorry, not Vicksburg, Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, and Gettysburg. They also protected the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia.
Ask this, is Francis Lubbock, is he have anything to do with the rule?
What thing?
The, like, is it, I don't know what, is it a town or city?
Francis Lubbock. Lubbock, Texas is named after Francis Lubbock. Does anybody know what is named after John Bell Hood?
Oh, I know. Can you flip it
Hood
back over?
what?
Fort Hood and Hood Country.
Fort Hood, Hood County.
Oh,
John Reagan. What is important about Mr. Reagan? What do we need to know about him?
wasn't he a
What do we need to know about? Well, yes, Ronald Reagan was a president. John Reagan was not. What do we need to know about John Reagan?
Wait, is
Yes.
became the leader in the Texas Democrat Party?
Okay, he was a Democrat from Texas. He served in the U.S. House
Hey, is he what's it called?
until Texas seceded.
In 1861, he resigned his seat in the House of Representatives to join the Confederate States of America.
Yep. What was his position under the Confederate States of America? What position did he hold? He served as the Postmaster General in the Confederate States of America, or the CSA.
He was captured at the end of the Civil War with Jefferson Davis.
Okay.
He was shunned.
He was captured. He was what?
Shunned.
Why was he shunned?
What does that mean?
Meaning he was, people didn't like him.
The draft of
He
a
wanted to
letter went
renounce
out.
slavery.
I'm sorry. Why did people decide at the end of the war they didn't like him?
They renounced drafted a letter to the Texans of slavery and their position.
So basically, did he call for federal cooperation? Did he call for some things to happen and people decided they didn't like him anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. After the war, he called for federal cooperation. He was then very unpopular.